RWBY, Volume 5, Episode 11. The More the Merrier. What happens? The heroes take a full minute to walk to Haven's auditorium to meet up with Lionheart. Yang notices Raven in the corner, and after talking for a bit, Raven portals Cinder and friends in. Hazel shows up as the White Fang starts attaching bombs to the buildings. They all talk for a while until Jean freaks out and attacks Cinder. We then spend a minute and 30 seconds pairing everyone up into fights we don't get to see, and then jump over to Oscar confronting Leo. Weiss tosses with Vernal for a bit, but since that was too interesting, we then cut over to Cinder evil monologuing to Jean, and RWBY chit-chatting with Emerald. Weiss's tussle continues, RWBY's eyes go crazy because Jean might get hurt, and then she gets knocked out. Now that Cinder's weak and not paying attention, Jean uses this opportunity to totally whiff an easy attack against her. Now pissed, Cinder continues her evil monologue, and then, without any resistance from Jean, stabs Weiss to close out the episode. I should preface this review with some information on how I write these. As I rewatch the episode, I make sure to pay attention to what I feel was done poorly and what was done well. I want to make sure I comment when something is worth praising. Knowing what's done right can be just as helpful as knowing what could be improved. That being said, I really struggled to find anything worth praising in this episode, and that was a big hurdle for writing this review. I don't like just complaining about the show. I want there to be elements in an episode that I can gush about, but there just weren't here. I wish I had more positives to mention. That would make for a more entertaining episode to watch, but I have to work with what I got. So, let's stop lollygagging and begin the review. Why does everyone look so mad? This looks like a group of people heading off to fight in a war, not a group of friends going to have a talk about future plans. We know that this is the beginning of the finale, and so is heading into a big fight, but the characters don't. Have the kids be chatting and having fun like they usually do. With all their pouty, serious expressions, it looks like they know they're heading into a trap. What the fuck are you looking at? RWBY takes a moment to gawk at this building for a bit. Why? They've been here for weeks. She must have seen this before. It's not their destination. Why does she think it's so interesting? I don't even know what that building is. I guess it's their CCT tower, but they don't ever tell us. It's the one the White Fang plastered with bombs, I know that. Did they have RWBY stop to look it over just so we'd recognize it when the White Fang show up?
Why did you bring your weapons?
Why did they bring their weapons? Crow uses the excuse of, we're huntsmen, but the answer might as well have been just because. The kids need their weapons because there's gonna be a fight, and I'm fine with that. But at least come up with a good excuse for it. If you can't, then just don't bring it up. I wouldn't have questioned it if Leo hadn't have brought it to my attention. And it's not like this would be the first time the character's weapons just suddenly appear when necessary.
I do, sir! I will gladly remove it for you. It's in the title.
Well, you know what you really are?
Raven, what are you doing? Just because you're a bird doesn't mean you're invisible. Like, you still need to actually hide.
They really are magic.
No shit! Did you just not believe Crow and Ozpin? You spent the whole volume hanging out with a little boy who has an ever-reincarnating 1,000-year-old man in his head, who told you he gifted some magic to the original maidens, making 4 weather-powered superhumans, whose power gets passed on continually, and one of whom killed your friend. And then 2 of your other friends mentioned how they saw Raven turn into a bird, where the old man-little boy combo person explained he made it so they could do that, leading to your revelation that they're named after birds already, and that's the joke. And now you're still fucking surprised by this? What is the point of this line? To show us how stupid Nora is? Ugh. RWBY's The Power of Friendship monologue is so dull. It's so trite and basic that it just becomes a high-pitched drone of positivity, especially on a second viewing where you know her speech gets nothing done. It's also awfully presumptuous of RWBY to think Raven hasn't had friends to help her against Salem in the past. Raven had Team Stark, she's got a tribe, Vernal's practically stapled to her. Raven seems to have plenty of friends already. I don't think a group of teens is going to offer a lot in terms of motivation to switch sides. Oh shit, a sneak attack! Everyone, look out! Oh, never mind. They're just gonna talk some more. Ambush all these people while they're caught unaware? No, just throw a single fireball and then slowly walk in and announce your plans.
Come on, guys. Is that any way to greet your old friends?
Actually, that's a good point. Mercury may have outright attacked Ruby, but our heroes thought Emerald was their friend. They don't know she's the one who tricked Pyrrha into killing Penny. They never saw her during the fall of Beacon. Yeah, she hung out with Mercury a lot and was on a team with Cinder, but with Ruby's tendency to assume the best out of people, you'd think she'd be surprised to find Emerald just as evil as her companions. But I guess exploring Team RWBY and the broken trust of Emerald's perceived friendship would have taken time away from Cinder snarking and Jean getting to freak out. Hazel is fucking intimidating, and I love it. William Orendorff's performance is great here, and with all the build-up we've had around Hazel thus far, seeing him join this fray really gets the blood pumping. Up until now, Hazel's been a mystery. We know he's dangerous because of Ozpin's warning in Volume 4, but he also seems so unwilling to partake in villainy that a lot of people were assuming he'd end up joining the good guys at some point. He disapproved of Adam killing Sienna, but we can see he's also got weird scarring on his arms. They've given us just enough info on him to make his inclusion here heart-pounding. However, despite the great setup, they didn't stick the landing. I'll go into it more when we look at episode 12, but let's just say that having the quiet, slow, calm one turn into the Hulk was a misstep. Think you've got enough? I counted 15 bombs on this building. That's way too many. Like 3 would have done the trick. Use your weapons of mass destruction efficiently, or else you're just wasting materials, dude.
This was all just a trap?
I never saw that coming! They definitely didn't tell us this was gonna happen in episode 9. Oh, wait!
Aw, don't take it personally, little bird.
Shut the fuck up! I hate Cinder's condescending tone here, which is good. I'm not supposed to like the villains, but I want to dislike Cinder because she does bad things, not because she acts like an edgy, holier-than-thou teen. It's not a good thing that Cinder was at her most compelling and interesting when she couldn't talk. Why would you out Lionheart as a traitor like this? He's a valuable asset to Salem, being an informant for years. He's able to give Salem direct info on her main adversary, Ozpin. Wouldn't he want to keep that secret so he could continue doing that for her? I guess Cinder knew he was gonna die later and figured it wouldn't matter anymore. Why aren't the kids listening to Crow? Ruby and the others should be trying to calm Jean down, not ready their weapons. But that would mean Miles wouldn't get to do his big dramatic speech, right? It makes way more sense for everyone to just follow Jean's example and ignore the guy they've been listening to all volume so he can have his little moment.
Who are you again?
Yes! Perfect response! Okay, we've got 9 good guys and 7 bad guys in a big empty room and they start to fight. What happens? We pair everyone off so no one's working together and we make sure to cut away from every fight before it actually begins. Who thought this was a good idea? First of all, this show is based on teams. Why wouldn't we get to see everyone work together? RWBY Ranger combo attacks could be awesome, so why just separate everyone? Because that's easier. You don't have to think about fight choreography if it's just 2 people running at each other and shooting. Secondly, why set up all these fights if we don't get to see them? The only one that gets substantial screen time is Weiss vs. Vernal, and that's just because they needed to show Weiss's aura break. This whole confrontation is just set up for Jean's semblance. They have to show Weiss's aura break so she can get hurt so Jean can heal her. That's the only reason Raven tells Vernal to go after her, because they knew this is the only fight we'd get to see. Have Vernal fight Weiss so we can show off her dumb weapons before she dies. This insistence on cutting away from all these fights is the biggest thing wrong with this volume, and is one of the main reasons people were so unhappy with it. When you put all of your action figures in the same room and say, now let's have them fight, we want to see that happen, not just stuck listening to them off screen. Also, why does everyone have a pre-battle dialogue? Is everyone just pretending they're in some fighting game like Soul Calibur? Or Blaze Blue?
Let's see what the Schnee name really means. I'm more than a name.
It seems it's our turn, Ruby. Yeah, let's do this!
Of course Ren and Nora have to fight Hazel together, because the writers consider them one character. Separate them so they could try to assist their 2 different team leaders? Nah, they're supposed to be in a relationship, which means they can't go more than 5 feet away from each other.
I don't wish to fight either of you.
Nor I you.
But we will if you're with her!
Or you could just go fight her. Hazel doesn't want to fight. That's one enemy you don't need to worry about. Go help your friends. But I guess that would mean having to actually let them get involved rather than just keep them in the background like usual. Why even have aura in this show if you're just gonna break it immediately? Lionheart's weapon is Mondo Dumb. I get giving him a shield. He can cower behind it. Except they made it the size of a dinner plate. The only thing it's good for is defending the forearm it's attached to, cause it's way too small to protect anything else. Not to mention that, in order to shoot one of his Beyblade projectiles, he needs to hold it at its least defensive position. He can't defend himself and fire an element at the same time, rendering it useless as a shield. And on top of all that, it's the exact same problem as the Albane brothers' daggers. It's a fancy wand. Point. Wait. Shoot the world's slowest fireball. It's boring, and it leads to boring combat. This whole interaction between Oscar and Leo lasts 2 minutes 11 seconds. Out of that, only 15 seconds is dedicated to the combat of Oscar hitting Leo's shield. That's 1 minute 7 seconds of talking, 15 seconds of fight, 49 more seconds of talking, and then they cut away. Why is the lead into those 15 seconds so long and slow? The Bronwyns are trying to kill each other. Jean's trying to fight a maiden. Ren and Nora just initiated combat with the one person we've seen Ozpin worry about. Why push all those off screen to instead show us Oscar walking up some stairs? This is one of the least interesting conflicts in the room, since we've gotten so little time with both of the combatants. Oscar's only interesting because Ozpin's in his head, and by keeping Oz in charge for most of the volume, Oscar hasn't had any time to solidify his character into the cast. And Leo's only gotten 3 scenes, all of which he's timidly slumped around. Leo does not feel like a threat. If this interaction was considered so much more important than all the others, then I wish something had come from it, because really it's exactly like all the other pairing off bits, but just takes 3 times as long.
What do I do?
Wait for them to cut away, of course. Since we can't see Vernal for a good portion of this fight, there's no tension. I can't worry that Weiss might get hit if I can't see the attack coming, you know? Cool, so Weiss went from taking on a Queen Lancer by herself to being so incompetent that she throws herself into walls. Seeing our heroes suddenly have a dip in ability isn't fun. During the White trailer, Weiss is elegant and has a refined fighting style. She really seems to know what she's doing, but here, it's like it's her first day with a sword. Not only does she manage to hit a pillar in a giant empty room, but it must have caused her a head injury too, since she insists on summoning RWBY, despite the fact Vernal is clearly too fast to give her that time. I've gone over this summoning problem in a different video, but to cover it briefly, Weiss has the biggest pool of abilities to work with during combat, but instead of using any of it, she just tries to summon. Why? She could slow Vernal down, or speed herself up, or do this shit to her, or maybe even try to use that sword of hers to stab Vernal. Weiss's combat is a lot of fun to watch once she actually gets to use her weapon like a rapier, rather than a wand. Summoning is useful, but shouldn't be the only thing she does anymore. This whole thing of Armor Guy pulling himself into existence is a cool visual, but I'm also distracted by how it's just another way to slow down Weiss's summoning some more. Awfully convenient that this is the only time he doesn't just mist his way onto the scene. We saw her summon a boar in seconds. Why is it suddenly so slow? Because Weiss needs to lose. RWBY's fight choreography took a dive during this volume, and a side effect to that was that it seems the crew struggled to have highly competent fights. Don't get me wrong, some moments are cool, but as a whole, combat has devolved into hitting each other's swords together. Now, Vernal's meant to stomp Weiss here, but since they don't know how to choreograph high-octane fights, they don't know how to demonstrate Vernal having superior abilities to Weiss. The solution? Just have Weiss get worse. You don't have to get good at directing or animating a fighter to show that they're leagues above their combatant, just have the other person forget how to fight. Since the director's choreography ceiling is so low, that means the character's ability ceiling had to follow suit. Wouldn't it have been better for Cinder to just not remember Jean? They never interacted, she didn't care about him, just let her not know who he is. It'd be more effective motivation for him. Or if you insist on having her remember him, have her remember him in relation to Pyrrha. I remember you. You're the boy who was always following that wannabe maiden around. If you have your character stand in one spot 5 feet from the person shooting at them, and casually block every bullet by randomly swinging their weapon back and forth, rewrite that part of the script. Are these characters fighting? Then have them shut up and actually fight. Are these characters having a talk? Then don't insult the audience with this twirly bullet-blocking bullshit. This isn't tense. This isn't exciting. It's annoying. Especially since this happens just so Emerald can tell RWBY shit we already know. Why make RWBY see Cinder just to immediately get rid of that illusion? Weiss can deflect bullets with her rapier? I want to say she's got amazing reflexes and hand-eye coordination, but the real truth is that the writers don't fucking understand how guns and bullets work. Why not have her shield herself with her glyphs? Because when it comes to fights, you only seem to know how to have a character swing their sword back and forth. Wow, 5 whole seconds of interesting fight animation. Too bad we already saw this shot done better in Weiss's character short. Real talk, when I first watched this episode, I didn't notice Weiss's aura break. It happens so often now that it's easy to overlook, which isn't good. Don't let your tension-building mechanic become so easily ignored by overloading it into your show. Making your sword just be fire would make it worse. She had a heated glass sword before, which could cut flesh. By turning it into fire, all it can do now is burn. But whatever, they tried. Why doesn't Cinder just, kill Jean? She had no problems offing Pyrrha, just rocket a dagger through his chest to continue with your mission. Why is Cinder using a sword anyway? Where's her bow and daggers? This is a world where picking your weapon is considered part of your character. Why wouldn't they give her her established weapon? Couldn't figure out how to have her use a bow and make it look good? It's not like we gotta see her fight anyway. She's fine. Not our precious self-insert, I mean hero! Weiss being in danger is apparently not an issue, but Miles' favorite character Jean might get a burn. Time to turn the silver eyes on. It's not even a similar shot to Pyrrha's death. If you're going to insist Ruby's silver eyes are connected to friendship or whatever, then maybe start making Ruby care about her team as much as she cares about Jean's team. Wow, maybe Ruby wouldn't have left herself completely open to attack if she had tried to learn how to use her eyes at some point. Too bad there was no time between all that sitting still and talking they had to do. Your sword is designed to be swung. Why would you thrust? Maybe he would have known better if he had actually been hitting something when he did all those training lessons. Get up, jackass, you just fell over. Why does it seem like Ruby's eyes did more to Jean than Cinder? Weiss isn't the only one who lost a few brain cells along with this fight. Jean doesn't think to try to push Cinder off him or attack her leg or do fucking anything. Her foot is on his armor. He shouldn't be in any pain. The characters are so beholden to what the script needs them to do that they lose all common sense. Wow, look at that reused animation. It sure does look a lot worse from this angle. Why doesn't Weiss try to run or call out for help? She's clearly struggling against Vernal. You have 8 friends here with you. What are you doing? Hey Jean, how about you get off your fat ass and actually try to help Weiss? Sitting on the floor and crying out while Cinder slowly walks within throwing distance is the peak of characters just doing what the script says rather than behave believably. This is tensionless, as we are all aware he isn't really trying so you can have your dramatic "will Weiss die" cliffhanger. This is weak writing and directing. Weiss screaming in pain didn't get anyone's attention. Why does everyone know to look over now? Why do all the villains stop so the heroes can look at Weiss die anyway? Oh right, because the script said so. Gotta have this moment be big and dramatic, which means all the fighting has to stop for gawking. I was never worried that the W in the title would die. I know some people were, but I find it hard to believe any of the main 4 girls are disposable at all. The only thing I could think would happen were Weiss to kick the bucket is that it would mean Jean would have another girl to be upset that he lost. This is a cheap cliffhanger that ends up getting a rushed conclusion anyway. So why is it here? So Jean can have all his little moments. Yelling at Cinder, charging her, heroically tries to sacrifice himself for his friends, gets to yell no, gets to cry over and over and over because the whole world is out to get him. This feels like self-insert fanfiction. While I may not have liked how often we focus on Jean over Team RWBY, they've at least kept his writing grounded. But here, the universe bends to allow Jean to be the most important center stage character. Cinder shows up with a mission, but puts that on hold to shittily fight off Jean. She's got a hate boner for RWBY, but ignores that, even once she's been knocked out. Cinder killed Pyrrha in an epic fight, but magically Jean holds his own against her without much trouble. Even though Cinder couldn't remember who Jean was, she just so happens to know Jean's other love interest is Weiss. Weiss completely forgets how to fight so Jean can be her white knight and save her. This is why I say it feels like self-insert. Everyone's motivations and abilities bend to allow Jean all these moments. I'm not saying Jean can't have moments, but they need to make sense in the established world. So, amongst all of this critique I've got, there are a few instances that aren't really important, but I want to talk about them anyway. So let's start another round of Nitpick Corner. Multiple times throughout the volume, people have mentioned that everything's gonna be going down on the night of the full moon. This is not a full moon. This is a full moon. This is a new moon. I mean, it looks cool, but yeah. Why have Yang run up to tussle with Mercury? Shouldn't she try helping RWBY or go after Raven? Why does Weiss just stand around and watch the twins fight rather than do something? Aim for anything other than his tiny shield, dude. Cinder should have shot Weiss with her bow. She has an established weapon. They tried to evoke Pyrrha's death with this framing. Why would you choose a spear? And so, that was The More the Merrier. Or perhaps a more accurate title would be The More the Harder to Animate. After spending a whole volume sitting around a house, this episode finally lets the plot continue moving, and they just spend the whole episode establishing the idea of these characters fighting. Knowing the characters are just off screen partaking in combat is not good enough. It's not fun being stuck simply listening to the fights happening in the background. Despite being offered all these characters and the idea of the more the merrier, we only get to see one encounter 11 minutes in, and it's a one-sided example of Weiss forgetting how to fight. The rest of the episode is watching people talk to each other, while sometimes hitting their weapons together. This episode is disappointing, as all the build-up throughout the volume has led to off-screen combat and everything bending over backwards to force Jean into center stage. Even though we've got all these heroes and villains, the story can't progress further than simply introducing them into a scene, and once it looks like the plot might actually progress, we cut to black. This episode is exactly like Rest and Resolutions, where the whole time the viewer is waiting for something to happen, but even with all the setup around this point, nothing does.
I want my brother dead.
Keep that off screen.
He has RWBY.
He certainly does.
Never have her acknowledge RWBY.
If Ruby Rose has learned to harness her gift, then you must take care to protect yours.
Meh, don't have them do anything noteworthy. This episode is a drag, and it only gets more annoying the further in you get, as you start to hope maybe this time something will get to happen, but it never does. RT seems to think that just proposing the idea of all this cool combat was good enough. It's not. If you're going to make an encounter where 16 characters are going to duke it out, let it actually happen. Otherwise, don't insult your viewers by just having the characters stand around and talk while cutting away every time they start to approach each other. If you're going through the volume, fast forward for the whole episode and start watching 7 seconds before the end credits. That's all you need, and is the only part of the episode that furthers the plot or is entertaining.
Maybe instead of going, "Here comes the club," you could try using your right hand or not yelling that.
But that's my thing, I love doing that.
And it's a one-sided— whoa, sorry I hit my desk there. This is a cheap cliffhanger. Sorry, I came in way too hot. Like, just— this is a cheap-ass cliffhanger! No, yeah, she hung out with Mercury a lot and was on a team with Cinder, but Cindy, fucking Cindy! Cinder x RWBY is Cindy. They'd have a kid and its name would be Cindy.